We're going to have a quick look at what controls the characteristics of living things, and this is part of genetic variation and control for GCSE science. Now, firstly, what do I mean by the word characteristics? So I've got an example of a person here and a plant. So what do I mean by the characteristics? Well, the characteristics are actually the features of each living thing and how they look. So, for example, um, in the person, we might be talking about something like nose shape or how uh, curly or straight the hair is or the skin color. And for example, for the plant, we might be talking about maybe the petal color or the height or the size and shape of the leaves. So all these are features. There are hundreds more features for each of those two living things, but that's just a couple of examples. Now you have to remember the way that the features are given to individuals, whether they're plants or animals, is controlled in the same way for every type of living thing. We often forget that elephants, whales, daisies, grass, worms, even all the way down to bacteria, their features are all controlled in the same way. So how actually does that happen? Well, if we look at the person, and you can see I've spent a lot more time drawing the plant than I have the person, probably because it's easier to draw a plant. But for a person, as you well know, everybody has two parents. So there's daddy and there's mummy. And daddy and mummy both have their own features, but they pass on some of their features to the what we call the offspring. Offspring. Okay, and this is just really a science word just for meaning children or babies. So plants have offspring, people have offspring. It just means they're children. And so the characteristics are passed on from the parents, and in fact, plants have parents as well. Sometimes they have two parent plants, sometimes just one, but we'll talk more about that in another video. And they pass on these features and characteristics, and they're all passed on by these special structures called genes. And this is a very important keyword that you need to know about. You need to know what genes are, where they're found, and how they control the features of all living things. So let's see how that actually works. You can imagine that you could take any cell from this person. You could take a cell from this person and you would see the structure of the cell, and you probably know what a cell looks like. So it's got various features, but inside the cell we have a structure called the nucleus. Okay, and inside that nucleus are other structures called chromosomes. Now, it's probably worth remembering that the chromosomes don't always look like this. They're actually made of a substance called DNA, and DNA, just to explain it simply for now, is like a long string, and it's at the molecular level, so it's a long, stringy molecule, and most of the time it's not coiled up into these structures called chromosomes, but for now I'm showing you as chromosomes because it makes it much easier to describe what these things actually are. So inside the nucleus we've got these structures called chromosomes made of this long stringy substance that's called DNA, and if you were to take one of these chromosomes out, I'd have to have a little bit of a fiddle here, do apologise. Okay, if you were to take one of these chromosomes out and enlarge it, you would see that along its structure there are parts of it that are the genes. So the genes are found along the structure of the chromosome, and different regions and different chromosomes have different genes that control different features. So for example, this might over here might be the gene that controls, I don't know, how quickly your hair grows. This one might be the shape of your nose, and you might have, I don't know, a few genes over here that controls your metabolism, and then a few more over here that control your eye color. Okay, so we could go on for a long time talking about the different features, but I think you get the idea. We have cells. Every single cell has a nucleus, apart from, I should mention, red blood cells. They don't have a nucleus, but every cell has a nucleus within which you'll find these chromosomes. And along these chromosomes, you'll find the genes. And it's probably worth mentioning here that it's the same. Where's my plant cell gone? It's right there. It's the same for plant cells. You could take out one of the plant cells, enlarge it. There's the chromosomes, and in the same way, you would find the genes that control the features of the plant in the chromosomes for each individual cell. Now, it's worth mentioning that also that the genes work at the molecular level. Okay, so these genes, they work at the molecular level and they produce molecules in the body. It's actually proteins they produce, but they produce these molecules in the body, and eventually these go on to show as your features or as your characteristics. Okay, so that's an overview of how each individual living thing gets its characteristics and the effect of genes on those characteristics. Now, the next thing I want to look at is briefly what kind of features are controlled by the genes and what kind of features that you have might not be controlled by the genes. And we say features that might have an environmental control, and that's basically down to your surroundings and not the genes that you have. And here are some examples. You might have done this activity in class at some point. You can do it again now if you want to. Just go to the website, download the notes, and you can have a go at this first before I do it. If not, keep watching and we'll sort these out. So we've got this circle here represents features that are controlled by genes only. This circle that has environmental causes or causes that are in the environment, and here this section in the middle is or are features. You put the features in here that are controlled by both genes and have an effect, or the environment has an effect as well. So let's start off with something very simple. Eye color, that would be genes only. Now, when I talk to students in class, they often say, well, hold on a minute, you can change your eye color, you can put contact lenses in, but it's probably important to point out that you're not actually changing your actual color of your eyes when you do that. You're covering it with a layer that has its own color, so you're not changing the color of your eyes. Something like ear shape, this is controlled by genes as well. I read today dimples as well is controlled by a single gene, so that's controlled by genes only. It's inherited from your parents. Tongue rolling, you may have heard of this before. It's whether you can roll your tongue, or in other words make it into like a tube shape. And some people can do this, some people can't, but it's controlled by your genes. Now, if you look at something like weight, this is influenced by your genes, but you can imagine that, well, yes, you might have genes that suggest that you're going to be overweight, underweight, or something like that, but of course it depends on how much you eat as well. So this has an effect. The environment has an effect on this as well, so we'd actually put that in the both section. Similarly with height, this is influenced by both. If your diet is not such that it allows you to grow properly, then you won't perhaps reach your full height or the potential height that you could reach. Something like hair color, you could say it's influenced by both, because its sunlight will affect what color your hair is. I would tend to really put this more in genes, because people talk about dyeing their hair and colouring their hair, and that's not really actually changing the hair colour. But again, something like the sun might make your hair go a bit lighter, so it could be argued that it's in both. Your accent, well, this is strictly your environment. You're not born with a French accent or an American accent or an English accent. The accent is simply due to the environment, and it can actually change over your lifetime. Your metabolism, we've talked about this in another video in the video in diet and exercise, and this actually is controlled by a set of genes. But having said that, if you do exercise regularly, this can be speeded up by the amount of activity you do. And something like intelligence, well, we often have huge debates about this in class. Some people say no, it's strictly your genes. Some people say no, it's your environment, and some people say it's actually a bit of both. I'll leave you to decide that one for yourself. If you're really that interested in what I think, then drop us an email. But Other than that, I'll leave that one to you to think about. I didn't realise I had so few that would go into here, but other things that might go into the environment only, apart from accent, maybe what language you speak, religion, how good you are at perhaps riding a bike or swimming or something like that, or whether you can swim or not, they might go into the environment part. Okay, so that's me done for this video, and I'll see you in the next